Today we're going to talk about comparing and ordering integers. Let's get started. We're going to start with ordering integers. So one really helpful way to figure out which is the least integer, which is the greatest integer, and how they go in order is to use a number line. Now, when I have a number line, if I can see a 0, I like to start with the positive numbers, because those are ones I'm familiar with. Okay, so I can see 0 is here, and I'm looking at my integers, -7, -3, 4, -2, -9, 1. Oh, hey, 1, that's positive, and I know where that goes. 1 space to the right of 0. Alright, that's 1. How about 2? Nope, we don't have a positive 2, but we do have a positive 3. So 2 would go right here. I'm not going to label it, but I will put 3 in the third space to the right of 0. Do I have any other positive numbers? Oh, yes I do. I have 4. So 4 goes 1 space to the right of 3. Now I'm going to look at my negative numbers. Those ones can be a little more confusing, so I like to think about them all at the same time instead of going back and forth between positives and negatives. Now, I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to count to the left. 1 space to the left of 0 would be -1. Don't have that. 2 spaces would be -2. I do have -2. Oops, that's 3. 1 space further to the left, counting, would be -3. Then I would have -4, -5, -6, -7. So I'm counting, even if I don't have those numbers in my list, I'm just counting their spaces on the number line. -8, -9. That is all of my integers put on a number line. So if someone asks me, list them from least to greatest. Least, I already told you I like to write left and right on my number lines. Least and left go together. So least to greatest, I would say, is 9, -9, -7, -7, -3, -2, 1, 3, 4. You want to be really careful when you read a question, because some of them will say left to right or least to greatest, and some of them will say greatest to least. Let's try one of those. If it asks you to list them greatest to least, first I'm going to use a number line to help me put them all in order. Now, you can see that the rightmost number on my number line here is -4. Not every number line is going to have 0 on it, because 0 is just one number in all the possible numbers, and maybe we're just not looking at that section of the number line. That's okay. You don't have to have 0 every time. But I am going to start at a number that I know. Now, -4. I know that numbers get bigger as they go to the right. So they get closer to 0 if they're negatives, and then after 0, once they pass that to the right, they become positive numbers and they get greater and greater. So I know to the right of -4 would be -3, because that gets me a smaller negative number, which is closer to 0, which is a bigger number. So I don't have any more room to the right. I'm going to be counting to the left. -4. One number smaller than -4 is -5. Cross that off. I don't have -6, but I'm going to put a little dot there just to keep it in my head. I don't have -7, but I am going to write down -8. -9, nope, don't have that. -10, yes, I do have that. -11, -12, -13, cross that off. -14, -15. Now, don't just be like, yay, I got my numbers. -15, -13, -10. No. You need to be very careful to read which order the question is asking you for. This question is asking you for greatest. Greatest is the biggest number. That's the number on the right. So you want to start with the number that you have that is the greatest. Don't get confused by the fact I rewrote the 4 in green. Oops, that was my bad. The greatest number in our list was -5. The next greatest number is -8, -10. Notice now that I've put them in order on a number line, it's just greatest to least means I'm reading right to left. Least to greatest means I'm reading left to right. So I'm just writing this list as I read it, starting at the right, the big numbers, and going to the left, the smaller numbers. -13, -15. There's my list from greatest to least. Now, if I want to, I can use a number line to help me compare integers. Sometimes comparisons are pretty easy. Like if it's a negative number and a positive number, I know that the positive number is always going to be bigger. When we use comparing signs, we use inequalities. 7 is greater than -3, or I can read that from left to right and say -3 is less than 7. Again, when it is positive numbers compared with negative numbers, should be pretty straightforward. 7 is greater than -7, or if you read it right to left, -7 is less than 7. Now when it's two negative numbers, that's when I think it gets a little tricky. So sometimes a number line is really helpful for you to think about it, remembering that the least numbers are on the left. So if I had a number line like the one that we just looked at, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, throw in -9 just for fun there. The numbers on the left are smaller than or less than the numbers on the right. So if I look at -8, it is to the left of -4. When I circle those two numbers that I'm trying to compare, which one's on the left? It's -8. So -8 is less than -4. So when I'm writing my inequality, I can look at the -8. A less than symbol means that it's kind of like the head of the arrow is pointing there, or if you think about it in terms of like an alligator or a Pac-Man, it's eating the bigger snack, which greater number there is -4. Or another way to think about inequalities is if I have dots, I have 2 dots for the bigger number, 1 dot for the smaller number, and then I connect them. However you think about writing your inequalities, that's what it should look like. If we compare -10 and -11, again, I like to use a number line because I'm a visual learner. I would have -10, -11, -12. I would look at my two numbers that I'm comparing, -10 and -11. Which one's on the left? -11 is on the left. That means it is less than. So -10 is greater than -11, or if we read it starting at -11, -11 is less than -10. For -3 and -1, again, sometimes number lines are helpful when you're comparing two negative integers. Which one's on the left? When you compare those two, it's -3. -3 is less than -1. And finally, when you're comparing two positive integers, you can use a number line, or you can just think about which one is bigger. 8 is bigger or greater than 5. Last but not least, you can do multiple comparisons at the same time. So let's say we have 3 numbers here that we're trying to compare. -13, -8, and -10. Just take it one at a time, starting with the -13 and comparing it to the -8. Here I have my number line to help me out. So I'm going to start just by looking at -13 and -8. Which one's on the left? Well, that would be -13. So -13 is less than -8. Now I can just focus on -8 and -10. -8 and -10. Which one is on the left? That would be -10. It's less than -8. So I can write an inequality sign that proves that. So what I have right here as my final answer is 3 numbers that are being compared, and the inequality symbols that make them true statements. Down below you can see I have another set of numbers, 5 and 2. Maybe I need a number line for this, maybe I don't. I know that 5 is greater than 2. 2 and -7. Again, positives and negatives sometimes are easier to compare than negatives and negatives. 2 positives is greater than 7 negatives. So sometimes you have your inequality symbols going both in the same direction. Sometimes you have one going in one direction and one going in the other direction. You just need to compare each of the numbers together, and notice that we're only comparing the ones that are side by side. I didn't really compare negative 10 to negative 13 in that comparison, or 5 to negative 7. Now it's true here that 5 is greater than negative 7, but you can't directly compare negative 13 and negative 10 using this 8 because one is greater than 8 and one is less than negative 8.